Good morning and welcome to the Faculty Association of California Community College Education Institute's annual policy forum. I am Kay Frindell Tusher. I teach chemistry at Santa Rosa Junior College, and I am the chair of the FACCC Policy Committee. This is an annual forum brought to you by the FACCC Education Institute's Policy Committee, which serves as a think tank for the Institute and for the FACCC EI Board of Directors. FACCC is faculty-driven and professionally managed. Its board of seasoned faculty professionals is dedicated to working cooperatively with your unions and academic senate to ensure that faculty voices are heard in the halls of government and across the state. FACCC conducts its annual policy forum to review the day's major issues and motivate faculty to organize and advocate. This year's forum will be a Q&A discussion on the pros and cons and future outlook of AI, artificial intelligence, in higher education. This is a rapidly evolving and challenging subject for many folks, and we are committed to figuring it out together. There will also be time for small group discussion in our own experiences with AI in our classrooms, as well as general session where we can share ideas for policy recommendations and advocacy as we navigate the era of AI that is already underway. I would like to give a special thanks to everyone serving on the FACCC Policy Committee. The forum would not be possible without your dedication and hard work. Our FACCC board members are also in the audience, and as is the president of FACCC, Wendy Brill-Weinkoop, and would like to thank them for their work and support for our profession. I'm excited for our policy committee members to introduce our special guests, Auyeung and Anna Mills. So first we will have Oranit Limani-Pressert introduce Auyeung.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Auyeung and Anna. I'm the president-elect of FACCC, and it is my honor to introduce my dear colleague, Auyeung. His real name, I think the real pronunciation is Tak. Tak is a real deal. He works with computer programming language. You would not believe it. He would program and give a code to every single test for every single student. So everyone would have one code, individual code. And it's so much work, but my goodness, if you're in his class, you have to really show that you can do it. Tak is always willing to help. I don't remember too many times that I reach out to him and he would say, I can't do it. He's always there to help. During the pandemic, I was ARC union president. I don't know how many people I sent to Tak for online technology. So I'm really grateful that Tak is here today. He is super busy, but he is here because he cares about FACCC and about our community. Tak has been a FACCC member for over 20 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And next we'll have Richard Mann introducing Anna Mills.
Hi, I'm Richard. I'm a member of the Policy Committee and the FACCC board. I think most of you know that at this time 2 years ago, almost none of us were talking about AI. It hadn't really come on our radar. And then by a year ago, it clearly was on our radar. And one of the hats I wear is as a commissioner for WASC, the accreditor for four-year colleges in California, Hawaii, and the Pacific. And I went to every AI session that was available at WASC's annual conference last spring. And by far the best of the breakouts I went to, because it was so focused on classroom and teaching dynamics, was by a colleague from UC San Diego named Tricia Bertram-Gallant, who has an amazing title. She is the practitioner in academic integrity, ethics, teaching, learning, and assessment in the age of AI. Oh my God, what a great title. And after the breakout, I went up to Tricia and said, who in the two-year college world is following the challenges of this for classroom teaching in the way that you've described here? And immediately the name that came to mind for her was Anna Mills. Most of you, I think, are familiar with LinkedIn, and I went and found that Anna was a real person, not an AI, a colleague and an instructor in the area that I think AI has the potential to be most disruptive for, teaching students how to write, which means first teaching them how to think, because if you don't have a thought, you have nothing to write about. So I began following Anna's work, and I'm incredibly delighted that she was able to be with us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad our guests are here. So we are going to go into the Q&A conversation section of our forum. And the policy committee has drafted up some questions that we're going to ask both of our presenters. I'm going to start with the first one, and I will have Tuck answer first, and then we will switch off from there on out. And so the first question is, could you please explain the basics of AI to us and how it is best used in an education setting?
All right. So I have a disclaimer to make. I can only share what I think I know, which is not necessarily what is actually true. So, with that disclaimer, I will go ahead and get started. And I can do a screen share too, because I actually prepared a cheat sheet for this forum. So this way, hopefully, it's easier for other people to follow. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so we are going to get started with AI in general. The conventional, at least back when I was in college, the conventional definition of AI is the boundary where machines approach human abilities in terms of intelligence. So there was a time when voice recognition was considered AI because that was the boundary at the time when machines were starting to be able to recognize the human voice and be able to kind of tell what we are talking about. And obviously that boundary has moved from voice recognition and the ability to play chess all the way to kind of general reasoning and stuff like that. So within AI, there are also strong AI versus weak AI. Strong AI versus weak AI does not mean anything about the ability of the AI, but rather, what the AI can do. So strong AI is a branch of AI where machines are to perform general as opposed to specific intelligent tasks. So a program that can play chess is considered weak AI. And the way we use ChatGPT or a similar product these days is called a strong AI because it is a general intelligence, or the approach is to imitate general intelligence as opposed to very specific intelligence. And then finally, we also have the term called GPT. So GPT means generative pre-trained transformer. The word generative means it's a differentiation from how we usually use neural nets. So neural nets have been around for a long time. Okay, even when I was a undergraduate student, they were already somewhere in the research form. But they're mostly used for recognition. In other words, you can give many pictures of a person to train a neural network. Some pictures have the person that you want to recognize, and other pictures do not have the person that you want to recognize. And by training, the neural net will be able to give you an answer of whether a picture that was not used in the training process is in fact of the person that you want to recognize, or it is not of the person that you want to recognize. So that's a very traditional way of looking at neural net. So generative in this case means, it is the mechanism is intended to generate what I would call a stream of output. So the response coming back from ChatGPT is a stream as opposed to a single output that is static of saying, okay, yes, I recognize this, or no, I do not recognize it. The word pre-trained means the model, which is also usually called a large language model, is trained by numerous samples, and we're talking about, I cannot remember the unit, but it's basically everything under the sun on the internet is used to train the most modern LLMs. And this model is typically a neural network that is trained using a mechanism called backpropagation. All I need to say is there is a mechanism for the neural network to be trained to learn from the training samples. And then the last word, transformer, is actually very specific. It has nothing to do with Cybertron, but rather it has to do with a mechanism where the model maintains an attention window and uses parts of the generated output also as a feedback back to the input. So basically it can create an output like a response, an article, and something like that that is as consistent as possible. And it can maintain what we call attention, which means it does not wander out of topic. This is something that the machine can actually do better than me because I tend to digress a lot in my classes. So the AI can actually do a better job at focusing on a specific topic. So at the very core, a GPT is an imitation engine based on the material that we use to train it. And this part here is, I think, for the next question. So we'll, I will, kind of defer this. But before I kind of hang up the mic, for this segment, I want, everybody to think about something that's a little bit on the philosophical side, which is, are we defined? Is our intelligence defined by how we process information? In other words, you look at, what is the input into our mind, and then you look at the output from our mind. And if the AI can imitate that particular pattern, the question is the AI able to think the way that we do? So it's more of a philosophical question of whether training a neural network using human created work is sufficient for an AI to think like us and not just to create documents and respond to prompts the way that a person typically would. So that's the last point I want to make for this segment.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Anna?
Yeah, I just love that phrase, an imitation engine. Please, I'm gonna quote you on that, Tuck. I really, because I feel like I go between being fascinated by the details and trying to get my head around a little bit of the mechanism of what we're looking at, and then sort of deciding that those details are not necessary to work well with it and to think about it, and then going to sort of a more shorthand. So my shorthand is, for what these systems are, is that mostly when we're talking about AI in education, we're talking about systems that generate text, and the important thing to know is that they're predicting text. They're sort of answering this question, what would the humans say next? Given this input, what's the likely human continuation of that prompt? And that they're doing that based, as Tuck said, on training statistical analysis of patterns in huge volumes of text from the internet. And to me, that helps frame it as like, they're not necessarily thinking. This is big math. This is sort of a word calculator is another way I've heard it described. And my favorite kind of educator on AI that's really shaped how I see it is Janelle Shane. She has a blog called AI Weirdness, where she uses humor to kind of illustrate the predictive nature of these systems and the way that it makes them sort of mess up and get things wrong in ways that reveal that they don't really understand. They're not experiencing the world. They're not saying things with intention. It's just kind of this calculation, this prediction that's incredibly sophisticated. So much data, so much compute going into it. And so it gets very good at mimicking these patterns in ways that are so uncanny. But I think that understanding of AI also informs how I would approach it in education. And, I really favor approaches that emphasize skepticism and awareness of what is AI and how it's different, that encourage both teachers and students to approach it very consciously, very critically, looking at ways that it might be biased or wrong, and practicing kind of questioning it, as well as seeing its uses. And always trying to separate the human from the AI and be very transparent about that. So that, okay, we know this is AI, we know what to look for and critique and question about AI outputs, and this is what's human, and maintaining a space for human interaction, communication, relationship, intention with text, as having its own value. So those are kind of the things that are important to me about approaching AI in education. And always it comes out of that sense of, AI is a different beast. It's predicting text based on this question: what would the humans say, based on all of our patterns? And that can be fascinating and incredible, but it's a very different thing than what we're doing with each other, with intention in relationship through words.
Thank you so much. Did you have anything you wanted to add? I mean, feel free to kind of talk back and forth with each other if you'd like, or we can move on to the next question.
Sure. Yeah, I think I just forgot to mention, because I think it was part of the first question, which is and how it is best used in education setting. So I want to kind of mention how I use it, because it's part of the question. So the way I use it is as a mentor or a tutor for my students. So I can create a custom GPT in Chat GPT. So it has the knowledge base of the very specific topics that I do teach. And then I can instruct the AI of how to interact with the intended user. So they understands that it is supposed to be a tutor, a mentor, but not someone to completely solve the problem and give the solution to the students. So that kind of limits, the output, and I have to give it very specific question to double check the response before it is released to the end user, to make sure that there is no actual source code included in the answer or in the response. So from that perspective, the way I use AI is, I think some people think the way I talk about this a little bit disturbing, but I would say anyway. I basically use AI to spawn mini-me's.
Nice.
In very specific contexts, in order so that students, instead of having to talk to me and they wake up like 1 a.m. in the morning and go like, okay, I need to figure out how to do this, and I will be available. I'm not gonna respond to text at 1 a.m. even if I am actually up at 1 a.m. So the AI in a certain sense is helping me to be my teaching assistant, in this context. So that is, for the most part, how I use AI, within what I do in education. So I just want to kind of mention that. And then the other one is, Anna mentioned intention, how, when we interact with another person, we always have intention. And I think as biological beings, we always have the intention of, first of all, survival and so on and so forth. So the question is, do we really want AI to have intention? Because, I think that is going to open up, a lot of, it's a slippery slope, because, what that can lead to is may not be something that we want to explore. So that's all the feedback that I have.
Thank you. Anna, did you want to add anything to that before we move on?
I don't think so. I'll just share a little slide deck that I have that kind of frames AI for students. So I just put that in the chat. But
Thank you so much. I'm going to capture that out of the chat right now for myself. I have learned so much in the first 15 minutes of this forum. I love it. Thank you. Okay, so the next question, Anna, we'll have you answer first. Considering the implications of AI's potential to impact both the role of instructor and student, should faculty modify their teaching in the age of AI? And if so, how?
yeah, I do think that we have to. But the interesting news to me is that the things that are most important, highest priority, are often the the pedagogical practices that we already know would help, that we might already be exploring. So, I mean, first there's this question of academic integrity, if we're assigning things that AI can do, which is most things. So one thing that we probably need to do is think more about accountability, because it's so much easier to autocomplete any assignment with AI. And to me, the best steps toward that are emphasizing intrinsic motivation, the social and affective sides of learning, and we know a lot of ways to do that. There's a lot of educational research on that. There's already a ton of faculty development. This is what my department at City College of San Francisco was, always focused on in my mind. And I was already always growing in those respects, or trying to. And so on one hand, I think, we have some great things to turn to, and often what we need is support and time and smaller class sizes to do that well. So we know about that, right? And so it kind of underscores the need for those best practices in teaching that are motivating to students. And at the same time, we also need support and professional development and compensation for adapting our teaching to, I think, include some elements of AI literacy, show students that we understand what AI is capable of and how it might impact the professions that they're looking at, the disciplines that we teach in. And so we need to develop that AI literacy and have that come into our classes. It's a big question, where should that go in the curriculum? And maybe it would be good to have a required digital literacy and AI literacy course, right, that every student takes. So there might be a specific place for it, but there also is a place for it within every course, I think, to some small extent. And so I think building our own familiarity so that we can refer to it, show students we understand, and that we've thought about how does this affect the learning outcomes? What are the ways that it could help students learn, and what are the ways it will get in the way, so that we can give them really specific guidance about whether or not or how to use it in their coursework. And that's a tricky territory, and it requires a fair amount of familiarity for us to think about what are all the different ways they might be using it, and how would those get in the way or support the learning, and what about the gray areas where it's kind of helping, but maybe it's also replacing and there's a dependency. So there's just a lot to think about. And I think that, we're the ones who need to figure out how we think we should modify our teaching is the other thing. So supporting us developing confidence and expertise is critical, because there's not somebody outside who's going to tell us what's the right thing to do in education. We're the ones who our expertise is needed to lead on that conversation. And I mean, I think the other thing is that just being aware that AI will be able to do quite a bit going forward. So in the workplace, I think that also underscores any teaching philosophy that really emphasizes deep understanding over memorization. So the critical thinking, the sort of the flexibility of thinking, adaptation to different disciplines, applying a concept into a new context, these kinds of portable skills are going to be ever more important, and any kind of rote memorization is going to be less important, as AI can do a lot. So, I do take heart from the ways that this new situation throws me back to those core values in pedagogy around students' own interest, deep understanding, intrinsic motivation, engagement with the material in relationship with peers and with teachers. And that's exciting to me. I think there's still a lot to figure out about academic integrity and accountability. And we also need support for that, because there's not one answer as to what we should do. There's this complex territory, and we need time, we need each other, we need collaboration to kind of have emerging best practices come to light. So I'll stop there, and I'm curious what Tuck will say.
Thank you so much. Talk, please.
All right. Well, my first I wouldn't say feedback, but I'm easily distracted. So when I read the phrase the age of AI, it reminded me of the age of Ultron, which is one of the MCU movies, and it is actually kind of appropriate too, because Ultron is or was an AI in the movie, and it just kind of went wild for one reason or another. So I think that was just kind of funny. Anyway, so I have some I have some bullet points here prepared. So is it okay for me to share my screen?
Yes,
All right.
please.
All right. So it is the same document that I have, and it is just on at a different portion. All right. So this is the question. And the answer is modification, maybe. Awareness is a big yes. I can see, there are certain subject matters, where the modification is not necessarily, required, but understanding, what AI is and what it is capable of doing can be very helpful. So the one type of class that I'm thinking about, is like sculpture, or some other classes where AI cannot really truly be fully integrated into it, because the outcome is entirely physical. But awareness is definitely a yes. The second point is we need to teach students how to use AI to enhance their education, but not as a shortcut. And I think this part is really it is really on every single professor. It is not on just the professor teaching English, because English is one of the subject matter that is the most impacted by ChatGPT and other types of LLM, the large language models. But I think everybody, all the professors really should integrate this into how they what they tell the students is, you can use AI to help enhance your education and learn how to do it. This is a great tool, but try not to use it as a shortcut. The next point is, as a tool, AI can propel some students to achieve more in the long run because they know the right question to ask. If they use AI in the right way, they can learn things a lot faster than reading a book, because AI is interactive and the book is static. Now, some can argue that, but in the process of reading content from a book, you're exercising the mind a little bit more, because it's static, so you are the only part that is flexible in order to understand the material. But when you're interacting with AI, you can kind of go like, okay, I'm not really quite sure what this means. Can you re-explain that in a different way? And then the AI can do that. So I guess it can be argued whether that approach is even helping the student in the long run, or it is not helping the student in the long run. But as a shortcut, I know for sure that AI can impede a lot of students in the long run. I had one student who told me last semester, after a kind of lengthy discussion of study skills and how to do things, and he told me, okay, I guess I have to stop using ChatGPT to do my homework assignments. It was a self-recognition, it was a self-realization on the student's part. I did not tell the student exactly that, but the student came to that conclusion after a little discussion with me. And the real question is, what question are we asking? What is the prompt, or what are the prompts that we are presenting to the AI? I think that really makes a difference. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, someone asked him what is the most important skill set in the new age of AI. And his response was, knowing what questions to ask, knowing, what is the right question to ask. That was his answer. And I would agree with him 100% on this particular point. There are many other points that I would not agree with Sam Altman, but this one, I think that is exactly, he's on point on this one. And there are a few things we can ask. We can ask AI to help explain a concept. We can ask AI to generate sample questions and evaluate corresponding answers. In other words, I tell my students, because I also use OER, Open Educational Resources. So I ask my students, it's like, okay, if you want more practice, this is what you can do. Okay, take my content, upload it to ChatGPT. I don't mind that at all. And then ask ChatGPT to generate some sample questions. And then you answer the questions and then have ChatGPT to evaluate your answer. And if the answer or if the evaluation from ChatGPT does not seem to make sense, then you come back to me, okay? Have a human, have your professor to take a look at what the AI is asking, how you're responding, and I can help you evaluate whether your answer is correct or not. And then we can also ask AI for certain kinds of knowledge. Anything that is political, I would not trust any AI, but for technical stuff, for the most part, AI, actually get it right to begin with. So those are all the points that I have on my slide, on my cheat sheet. But I also want to kind of mention a few things regarding what Anna mentioned. Accountability is an interesting thing because I was in another meeting, another forum, and somebody asked the question of, hey, a faculty member was asking the question of, if I use AI to generate my syllabi, and if I use AI to generate my teaching content and so on and so forth, should I tell the students that I used AI for everything? That question was asked in that particular forum. And what went through my mind at the time was, well, it depends. If you are okay with your students using AI to, to answer all the exam questions and whatnot, then probably it's okay for you not to disclose that you're using AI to do everything. But you have to be consistent. If you expect your students to actually do their work and the assessments are reflecting the competency of the student and not so much whether they can ask a question in ChatGPT and they copy the whole answer back, then you probably want to disclose that to your students that you are also using AI to generate your teaching content. So that's one. And then the other one is, I think, and this is probably going to be painful for a lot of colleges, because I think the SLOs of a lot of our courses are outdated because of the availability of AI. And just like what Anna said, the focus is no longer, whether we can produce the output, whether we can produce the actual product and make it polished. The question is, can we think? Okay, because asking a question is actually heavy lifting. Okay, let me rephrase that. Asking the right question is actually heavy lifting on the mind. I'm sure all of you have the experience of a student raise his or her hand, and you have to finish your sentence. You go like, okay, wait until I'm done with my sentence, and then you can go ahead and ask your question. And by the time you get back to the student, and the student would just go like, oh, it's okay. I don't have a question anymore. I just answered my own question, because the process of asking a question or formulating a question is actually heavy duty intellectual work. And a lot of times in that process, the student would have also figured out the answer already. So I think that's, so the focus of the SLO may need to shift from the outcome, of the product to the process to get the product. So it can be focused more on the thinking side and the problem solving side. And as Anna mentioned, critical thinking. And for me, because I teach programming classes, the logical and analysis, like really rigorous logical analysis of something is also important. And then the last one is, there are two more points. I'm sorry, I'm taking up so much airtime.
No problem.
So the last 2 point is, this one is kind of a joke, but I think we can give it a try is we can log into your favorite, your chatbot, and then ask the AI to tell us how we should change the way we teach because of the availability of AI. I'm pretty sure it'll be entertaining at least. So I think I'm going to do that, right after the forum is finished. And then one thing I always tell my students, and not to discourage my students, but to kind of tell them what is the new reality is, if AI can do it, then why are you going to be hired to do the same thing? In other words, my students have to think about what they can do that the AI cannot do by the time they graduate. I understand if they're just coming in, they're taking the first class in programming, the AI can definitely outdo them. Okay, no question about it. But they have to keep the objective in mind. My long-term goal is to be employed. So by the time by the time I graduate, what can I do that the AI cannot do? And that would be the reason why somebody is going to hire me instead of relying on the AI to get a job done. So that's kind of my feedback. So let me stop screen share, and that's it right here.
Thank you so much. Anna, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, that brought up so many things that was like, oh, I should have already brought that up. I should have emphasized this. I mean, I really appreciate the way Tuck says that, we do need to acknowledge when we have used AI. I think that's a really important opportunity for building AI literacy in students, that they see both that we're labeling it, we're saying this is what AI did, this is how I used it, this text was AI, this other text is me. And they also see how we used it. So I have a little acknowledgement statement at the bottom if I've used it to generate examples for an in-class exercise. I'll have a little statement at the bottom with a link even to my chat session transcript, so they can sort of see how I interacted with AI to come up with those examples. And that builds trust, I think, that we can still use text and sometimes know it's coming from a human, and that we're committing to label it is important, I think. And it's a goodwill gesture. I mean, we're in a different position from the student. When we come up with an activity, it's not as essential that we wrote every word of that for it to be useful for their learning. But if they're taking a test, it's all about their learning. So we absolutely need to know what's coming from them in order to assess the learning, design for learning. So it is a little bit different, but I still think it's a goodwill gesture for us to say, I'm going to be transparent about my use. I'm asking that of you as well. So let's commit together to that. I also appreciate that Tuck brought up process, because that's another sort of core thing that we've learned is useful to teach when assigning writing, that acknowledging that there are steps in the writing process and those steps are valuable to developing our thinking, it really helps students develop their writing. But more importantly, it also sends that message that, why are we assigning this? It's not for the product. It's not so that there are more essays in the world or more short answer descriptions of, why I worked the math problem this way. It's not for that product. It's for the thinking that they experience as they do that writing. And as they do the brainstorming, not just the final draft revisions, but even those early stage writing process steps are so valuable in themselves. And so I think, we have a lot of resources in the Writing Across the Curriculum movement to emphasize the value of writing in the writing process wherever we're assigning it in any discipline. And we can really turn to that as a key response. And then I haven't tried this yet, but I'd like to. I have this contradictory chatbot that that gives 3 different answers to each prompt. It's supposed to give answers that are mutually incompatible, so they can't all be right. And this is to help develop skepticism of very plausible AI outputs. Like, it often sounds so good and polished that even my first instinct is often like, yeah, oh wow, yeah, that's pretty good. And then I really have to pause, and later often I'll see, oh, but actually that sentence doesn't really say anything, or no, that's not quite right. That doesn't quite match up for this reason, right? So giving students an experience of that, I think is so important, because they often have less confidence than we do and are more apt to say, oh, wow, right? So designing experiences where they have to question it, where they're encouraged to question it, where they're building confidence in questioning it. That also, as Tuck said, that kind of builds a hope that they might have something to bring beyond what AI can do, right? And practice in questioning it and being skeptical of it, where it may be inaccurate or not make sense or be biased in ways that are not obvious. So I would be curious, like, I haven't asked it yet, but to ask it, how should we change our teaching in the age of AI? And it'll give us 3 contradictory answers. We have to decide. Could be fun. Yeah, but I'll pause there so we can go to the next question.
Okay, so this question will start with talk. What AI skills will benefit students post-education, and what role will community colleges play in equipping students with these skills?
All right. So when I worked on these questions, only the first part was here, but I will see if I can also append to my canned or the response on the cheat sheet to address the second part as well. So let me do a screen share again. Here, there we go. All right, so this is the question: what AI skills will benefit students post-education? I think students can continue to use AI as a teaching assistant or a teaching aid to help patiently explain concepts that they need to learn post-education. Because of the area that I teach, which is computer information science, things are always moving at a fast pace. And documentation can be sparse, can be a little bit technical, and sometimes can be difficult to understand because of the way it is written. And also, the funny thing is, AI can actually understand program code as well, and it can explain, how something is done, looking at a piece of code. So I think that is a skill that my students, specifically to computer science and anyone who's involved in programming, or possibly all STEM students, can benefit post education. Expectations from employers. I think they using AI can kind of help someone who's post education in their career to try to understand what the expectations are from their own employers. And that is kind of important, because in order to stay employed, that expectation needs to be understood. And not every employer make that very clear, what they expect from their employees. Industry, career dependent, and changes rapidly. Okay, I think I have a little formatting issue here because it was in the markdown format, and I can see the asterisk, which is supposed to be on the next point, to be on the same line here. So they need to understand why people are hired. I think this is the overall for these 3 subpoints here. I'm not sure what AI skill, the AI skill is to ask, as I said a little bit earlier, is to know what question to ask. And to ask those questions, means somebody needs to have these critical thinking skill. And critical thinking, a certain portion of critical thinking is keep asking questions. Is this true? Why is it true? And how it is useful, and so on. And asking those questions and keep asking those questions is a skill that a post-education student can retain in order to interact with the AI. Basically, you keep asking questions that are deeper questions, about what they're doing, where they're heading, and so on. Rigor in the application of logic. This is actually kind of interesting because the AI that we have now cannot do this. Okay, of all the things that the AI can do, this is one of the things that it doesn't do very well. Even with the newer model, I have found that they're still having problems answering some of the questions that I ask my students in the midterm. Some of the questions they can, the AI can answer perfectly, and other things it cannot. Using AI to solve problems is going to be an kind of ongoing thing because I don't think AI can really solve problems right now. Now, it might appear that it can solve problems, but that's only because those problems have been solved before and they have been documented. So when we are not aware of the actual solution to those problems, and then the AI is basically regurgitating the solution that it has been trained on, then we think that the AI was able to solve the problem when it really is just regurgitating from its vast knowledge base. So relating to the AI skill, knowing what question to ask once again is important because when a student that is post-education, in his or her career has a problem to solve, knowing what question to ask, in the AI to extract that knowledge from the AI, even though the AI is not really solving the problem, but it is just, reaching into its deep knowledge well, to find the actual solution that has been documented already, but knowing how to ask the question and providing the context, so that the response, the response to the prompt is as relevant as possible. Those are the skills, that are important. So the second part of this question, which is not here, is how community colleges can help with our students to develop those skills. I show my students how to do things. I particularly is not very good at making questions, at the end of my OER content. So I rely on AI to generate some of those questions, and then I would basically read the answers to make sure that the AI is not making any mistakes. But I will share that prompt with my students. So in other words, they don't even have to get past education. They can learn how I prompt the AI given some material that they're supposed to understand so that they can interactively, or I shouldn't say interactively, so that they can get a question about that material, think about it, formulate their own answer, and then look at the actual answer from the AI and then compare those two answers. So I do it in my class. I show the students, how I use AI for that particular purpose. And the more we do it, and share our experience with using AI, the more the students will understand, oh, okay, so this is how AI can be used in a positive way to help me understand the material, or at least help me assess how well I am understanding the material. So that's all I have prepared for this segment. Let me stop the screen share. There we go.
Thank you so much. All right, Anna, your turn.
Well, this is such a huge question, and I do have a knot in my stomach in thinking about it to some extent, to be honest, because I mean, on one hand, the context is that we don't know what the world of work is going to look like, and there's not one inevitable outcome. This is being shaped. This is something we are shaping as a society. How will people work with AI? How much will AI do? How much will we decide still needs to be human? These are the huge questions that our society is grappling with. And it's interesting how the CEOs of these companies are also very nervous about these questions and unsure. And, I just listened to a podcast that talked about, should we have robot nannies? Maybe we should, after all, maybe they would be better. So, there's not a decided future of what AI is going to look like in the workplace, but it does seem pretty inevitable to me that everybody is going to be interacting with it. I mean, maybe that's a little too far. Some people will refuse. Some people will be conscientious objectors and say, I want to have nothing to do with AI. But it's already increasingly integrated into our digital lives. And I think it will continue to be in the way that the internet is, to the extent that the internet is. So yes, it makes sense students will need to interact with it well in their future careers. But what does that look like? And how do we teach those skills? We also don't know exactly what kind of AI we'll be interacting with and how capable it will be in a few years. The CEOs of these companies are expecting to have super intelligence, much better than what we have now. They're expecting that we'll have these systems that are as good as, 100 PhDs. And they actually think that's real and that's coming. So there's a huge amount of uncertainty. And part of what I think is important is to be honest with students about that and to recognize our own role in the civic discussion about what kind of a world do we want? Are we looking for AI to become our nannies and we just have leisure? Some people think that that would be great. Are we, which jobs should be human? So that's the big context. Now, the thing that we do know, I think, is that to interact with AI, as Tuck said, you need critical thinking, logic, problem solving, and I would say reading and writing skills, right? So at this point, that's how you interact with AI. Prompting is writing. And responding to AI involves reading what it gives you critically and thinking in an original way how you could respond and what the limits of it might be. So on one level, I think there's a lot of talk about AI literacy, and there are certain things that students need to learn that are specific that would be great to have an AI literacy course that's required. But maybe even more important than knowing those specific things are these core skills that we're already trying to teach. And paradoxically, it might be that you need some protected experience of writing and reading without the assistance of AI to develop the skills to work well with it in future. So I think, some of the things that I do in interacting with AI are very much rooted in my many years of reading and writing and struggling with those things and learning strategies to approach them that didn't involve AI, right? So I think, in a way we can take heart that if we're teaching critical thinking in our courses, that is the core skill that students need to interact well with it, with AI in future. So we shouldn't abandon that. And the other thing that we may already be teaching is metacognitive reflection. So kind of that knowing what questions to ask, as Tuck said. Part of that is being aware of our own thinking process, being aware of where we're stuck and what we need to know, where we're going. That helps us prompt an AI system. That helps us decide, oh, I could actually ask it to ask me questions since I'm not sure what questions to ask. Or here's, this is what I'm stuck on. Let me ask it for what are 3 ways that I could think about this. And then maybe I reject all of them, but it helps me get over that hump. So, so that self-awareness of our own thinking process is another core part of working well with AI. And I think we've already talked about the understanding its limitations and building skepticism of it. But, again, that's, as Tuck said, that's where you bring value. If you can come in and say, this sounds really good, but what data is it making this prediction based on? Is it actually biased? And here are the ways we could re-envision that or question that. That's bringing value to a situation. And I mean, but I do also think that, like, some of the things Tuck is mentioning of the ways we could use it, it is important for students to have a sense of how people use it and the variety of ways, especially ways that are not to replace work, but to collaborate with it, to stimulate our own thinking, to keep pushing it to do better. To me, those are the core practices that students need to become familiar with. So asking for what you want and pushing it to do better. And approaching its assistance in a lot of different creative ways. So I think if they're practicing that, if they're getting that basic idea, and they're building critical thinking and self-awareness and confidence, to me, those are the core of what we know we will need. And then there's the bigger societal questions that I hope that we and students can feel empowered to be part of, deciding what kind of world of work we want in the future. So I'll stop there for now.
So much. Tuck, would you like to respond to that or add any other comments?
Yeah, I can just tell you what just bubbled up in my head, because that's how it is with my brain, but with my mind is it just has bubbles, that just bubbles up and it bursts, and then I lose track of those things. The first one is about delayed gratification. I think this is kind of interesting because when AI was not available and people have to learn from just reading the textbook, they don't get this instant gratification of, I don't understand this, let me ask. Or worse yet, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to solve this problem in my homework assignment or the test, I'm just going to ask the AI to do it. So I think there's a certain portion of this is really just the self-discipline about gratification, like okay, I want to solve this problem myself, so I know I can use AI to do this, but I'm not going to do that. It's not even a skill in this case. I think it is a mindset, or I don't know. I see that I have some psychology colleagues here from ARC, so they would probably know the right term to describe this. But it is the control that we need to develop and say, I'm not going to ask a colleague or AI to get an answer right away. I am going to spend some time to think about this and see if I can figure this out myself. And developing that mindset and that, I guess, habit is one word to describe it. I think it's really important. It's becoming increasingly important because with email, okay, we can email somebody and ask somebody, okay? With Stack Overflow, which is a very popular website to solve technical problems, someone can post a question and expect an answer in maybe half an hour to an hour. With chatbots, you can have it like right away. It would come back right away with the answer. So I think, that it really is something that I'm not sure how to teach it, okay? I don't know how to teach somebody of okay, let's not try to get this gratification of I just solved the problem, because you didn't solve the problem, somebody did, but to spend some more time to think about it and see if you can figure it out. But I think that is kind of important in the age of AI. And the other point that Anna brought up that was really, really important was being aware of our faculty members, of our own thinking process. I have only started to do that for the past maybe 5 years or so. And I wrote some OER content to describe my own thinking and also learning process. And that can be helpful, because instead of telling the students, oh, the way you're using AI is not right, we can probably tell them instead, what are we supposed to do? How do we as faculty members learn when we did not have access to AI or anything like that. So I think bringing that up, is super important. So thank you, Anna, for mentioning that, because I think if we all do this and we all share and analyze our own thinking process, that will help our students to understand, oh, okay, so instead of asking AI for everything, I now have some tools so that I can work these problems out myself and replace some of the interaction with AI with deeper thinking, and as a result, developing much better critical thinking skills and other skills that are actually needed for the employment. So thank you, Anna.
Thank you both so much. Anna, is there anything you want to add before we go to the next question? Okay. So the next question is, and I think some of this you've gotten to, but I'm sure there's more to say. What are the impacts, positive and or negative, you've observed so far of AI in education? And this one is for Anna.
Okay. Well, I think a mixture of excitement and stress among teachers, overwhelm, confusion, fear, a sense that, after the pandemic, is this, for real? We have to adapt to this now. People saying, okay, this is when I'm ready to retire. Yeah, I've definitely seen those impacts. And also, I think sometimes a sense of alienation of, this is coming from somebody else and into my domain, like we didn't ask for this. We weren't part of the conversation setting the terms on which our society is changing with AI. So there's a frustration, I think. It's a bit of an indignation about the power structure, the role of academics that's been secondary to big tech. And at the same time, there's incredible sort of excitement. This is such a big change. There's so many possibilities, ways that we can use it. And there's a sense of opening when there's a big shift. There's a sense of awe and at what these systems can do. And I think there's also a sense of like, we better get on the bandwagon because what is my line? How do I approach this so that I continue to be respected and have credibility? And so it's such a mixture. And at the same time, I think there's a big academic integrity impact. I do think that, I mean, there's been studies that have shown different things. There was a Stanford study that suggested that cheating was at about the same level. But there was a recent survey of college leaders across the US, and 59% said they thought cheating had increased. Only I think 19% thought it was the same. And I think that fits with what students are telling me about how common it is that their classmates might cheat with AI, and what teachers are telling me. Even teachers who are excited about AI are saying, but what do I do about the cases where students are misusing it and it's clearly not their work and they're not getting the learning out of it. And so I think there is a sense of, on one hand, there are a lot of things we can do to reduce cheating, and why panic? It's not going to help us. And I think that I do feel like it's mostly managed in my class. But I do think there's a sense that like, we don't have enough support to adequately respond to this and come up with our own responses. So I think there's a sense in my department of, hold on, this is really big. And what's the structural response where we have enough support, we still have academic freedom to make our own decisions about pedagogy. And we know that AI detection is not reliable. that there are some concerns about it. It's not enough to just say, oh, I'm going to use this software and that'll check if they've used AI. It doesn't work that well. And it can lead to false accusations. So even if we use that, it's not adequate. It's not enough. So I think there are the ongoing questions of like, well, what do I do then? What else can I do? Is it all, am I going to do all in-class writing? But that's problematic. Am I going to do more oral kind of examination? Am I going to use process tracking? That's something else I've turned to, where you're seeing the writing history in the document. That also is not, they can game that. They can retype AI text, or there even are, unfortunately, apps that will simulate typing into a document. They're free. It's really wrong. So I think there is a sense of like, we need to address the academic integrity question, and we don't want to do it punitively. We don't want to do it in a way that undermines our relationship with students, the sense of trust. We didn't get into teaching to be policing students, right? So it's a really complex set of questions as to how to handle it. And so I think, among teachers, I'm seeing a sense of like, hold on, we need more support to sort this out, because it's challenging and it's complicated and there are gray areas and there are so yeah, I think that there is that sense, and at the same time, I guess the best impact that I have seen and feel is a sense of along with that sense of like, wow, this is a big disruption, this is a big deal, and how do we respond? There's this sense of like opening up to curiosity, maybe playfulness, also fear, but there's a sense that we're with the students as humans in this moment of uncertainty around AI, when it's changing so rapidly, and we might use it one day and think, wow, I had this experience, and they might use it and say, I had this experience, and how do I feel about that? And so I think there's a sense in which we're in the boat with them, and we're figuring out how to change teaching practices and policies, and there can be a turning toward each other and kind of an open education ethos of collaboration and trust with students, and inquiry with students. And that's the best feeling that I've gotten out of it in my classes. When I say to students, look, I don't have all the answers. Here's what I'm learning. Here are my choices now. Here are my policies. And I really want to know what you think, what you're experiencing, how you're seeing this. And I want to make a space where we can both be learning about it and shaping our opinions and our practices together. And that feels very energizing to me as a teacher. It's a really exciting moment to be in the classroom with students, when I can be vulnerable and we can be in it together, looking at AI and the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that answer. Tuck, it's your turn.
All right. Let me screen share again. There we go. All right. So the first thing I have observed, actually this is firsthand observation, is that people who are students who use AI as a shortcut, in other words, they use AI to do their homework assignments, and for certain classes also use AI for assessment purposes, they are going to encounter a rude awakening after graduation. At least in the field of computer science, that's going to happen. Because I already know, from also, people who just recently graduated, that it is very difficult for recent graduates to find any work. Even though, the pay is great. I mean, my students, after 1 or 2 years in industry, after they get a bachelor's degree in computer science, they'll be making more money than all of us do. Okay, so the money is there, but that's only assuming that they can succeed in the hiring process. And people who rely on AI to do their homework and also to take their tests is not going to be able to land a job. I mean, that's, that's just going to happen. Okay, but that may be very specific to the computer science field and not so much applicable to other fields. So I do not know about that. If you know what check is, well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is check is basically gone. Okay, they're basically non-existent at this point. Check is a quote unquote online tutoring service, which I guess some people also use it to get the material like homework, exam from past semesters, and also to get the solution of all of those assessment, so that they can quote unquote cheat in when they take the class. But check is pretty much gone because of AI. Okay, students just have to subscribe, pay $20 a month, subscribe to AI, any type of, you can use any variety of AI, and they will all be able to do the homework for the most part. So that's the kind of good news, bad news, scenario. Check is gone, but it is replaced by something that's even worse in some sense. Okay. And then the custom GPT, can be effective as a tutor or mentor on specific topics. So that's kind of the positive impact that I have seen, because I actually asked my students at the end of a semester as to, did you find my bot helpful, in the understanding of the material? And they said yes. In fact, my students asked me, why didn't you release it earlier in the semester? I go like, well, I released it as soon as I finished it and have done my own testing to make sure that it is ready. So from that perspective, I think it is a positive impact. Basically, we can now create better tools to help our students learn the material that they're supposed to learn. So to get back to some of the points that Anna made about academic integrity, I have to be blunt in this case, because cheating is easy with any online courses, regardless of the availability of AI. Check was around and people use check, and when now that we have AI, it's getting even easier. Okay, you get a response back right away, and you don't even need to get access to the solutions of all the previous tests, because the AI can figure it out for people who want to take those exams. And for that reason, I only teach classes in person. I know that may not be an option for some people, and for certain disciplines, it is also not an option. But in my case, it is an option, and I just exercised that particular option. So I only teach online, and all my exams are on paper, and students can only bring a calculator to the exams. Now, is this intrinsically punitive to the students who really need to use AI to learn and to demonstrate what they have learned? I don't think so, but some people may think that is the case. Fortunately, in our district, there are multiple colleges, and I am the only person who is teaching 100% fully in person. So for students who really need to take the classes online, there are plenty of alternatives to take those classes online. So that's kind of this is my take on academic integrity. It might be a little bit more extreme than some other people, but my view is once a class is online, there's really no way to authenticate that whoever is answering the question is actually the student. There's just no way we can make sure of that. The easiest solution to get around any type of proctoring approach is to use a KVM, otherwise known as a keyboard video mouse switch, because that in that way a student can switch to another computer and ask the questions, and then come back to the first screen or the first computer, and then just retype the answer. And then the other one, the other observation that I have made, this is just a possible future. I hope it is not our future. But what I can see right now is Kamigo and other AI platforms, they are already encroaching publishers, the territory that used to be publishers, territory. In other words, they are getting into education, but they are not only providing modules that we can plug into Canvas, they are providing, at this point, they are providing mentors and tutors that are AI based, but I can tell that the direction is eventually the whole class can be taught using AI. So as a result, I think education as a whole is going to be impacted fairly big time, because of the development of AI. Now, how far they can push it, can they push it beyond being a mentor or a tutor to become the actual, professor in an online class? That I cannot tell, okay, when that's going to happen or whether it can happen in, the next 10 years or so, I cannot tell. But I can, see the direction, and I can see, a lot of incentives for people to kind of, well, when I say people, I mean administration and also, these AI platforms to try to push it in that direction. So that's kind of the, I guess, you can see it as a negative impact. I don't think we will be fired because we're getting replaced by AI, but at some point, I can see the need to replace faculty member as we retire is going to be less and less. And instead, if it is possible, some institutions will start to use AI to teach courses instead of relying on people to teach those courses. So that's all I have for the fourth question. Let me pause here.
Thank you so much. Well, it looks like we have about 10 minutes left in our session. And so I'm thinking if it's okay with you, perhaps we'll roll into the final question and then you can, whatever comments, oh, hi, Kitty, whatever comments you would have wanted to add, you can just throw them in with the last question. And then if I think there are a few coming in from the audience, and if we have time, we will try to squeeze those in as well. So do you have any additional words of advice for faculty or students struggling to understand the role of AI in teaching and learning? And why don't we let Anna take this one, and then
my biggest message is just, let's not be intimidated. And let's not think that we have, nothing to contribute if we haven't studied AI deeply, or, we don't think of ourselves as technically focused. Because I think that the amazing thing about these systems is that it's a text interaction, it's natural language, and it really, we have expertise that's really important and useful to working with these systems and thinking about their roles. So not to be intimidated, not to underestimate the value of our own contribution to these conversations. And I think to have some room for playfulness and curiosity as we interact with them. There can be a lot of pleasure in it. I think to continue to look at the ethical concerns. We haven't talked that much about that, but I know there is a movement among writing teachers of folks who want to refuse to invite students to use AI because of the environmental costs, questions about how these systems were trained, bias. And so I think that we can discuss those issues and think about how to shape AI going forward, and continue to engage with the reality that it's already here, it's around us. Students need to know how to work with it. But mainly, I think we've got to advocate for compensation for our time to address this well. And that's really hard, but it makes sense. We need structures that support us to respond, and to show the importance also of human teachers, of relationship in teaching. And so I hope that we can have professional development that that supports, that's not just top down telling us what to do, but that's also spaces for us to develop, our responses and collaborate. And yeah, last point would just be like, it's okay to have a lot of contradictory feelings about AI. We might be angry, we might be scared, we might be intimidated, we might be excited all at once. And I hope we can kind of, give each other a lot of grace and ourselves a lot of grace and have some openness to all those feelings and still feel like we can move forward and not be paralyzed. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Talk, what are your final words of advice?
All right, let me screen share again. So I don't think I'm really qualified to give any advice, but I can share my thoughts. Um, I think, to me, it is all about curiosity. So I experiment a lot with AI. Since I'm not disclosing anything that is sensitive or personally identifiable when I interact with the chatbot, I'm not really too concerned about the data collection part of AI. And even the content that I upload, because I use OER, the whole point is it's open, okay? People can use it. So I'm also not concerned about, uploading or having my students to upload the OER content that I have written and developed over the years. And experimentation is really an important step to find out what AI can and cannot do, because in the process, sometimes I get surprised of what AI can do, and other times I also get surprised at what AI cannot do, because there are simple stuff that are just logical puzzles that I find that the AI cannot do. It's like, come on, you are a computer, you should be very, very good at logic, and the AI cannot solve the problem. And then other times, there are things that I go like, okay, the AI really should not be able to do this. And I was surprised that, oh, wow, you actually get a job done. The second point is to identify and focus on the long-term goals, and this applies to education in general, as well as the student learning outcomes of our courses. Um, so, that obviously depends on what classes you're teaching, and also, the industry where your students are going into, or the long-term goals of your students, or what you think are the long-term goals of your students. The emphasis here is long term, because if the SLOs are written in a form where it focuses on the product, like what we talked about a little bit earlier, then maybe those SLOs can be changed to focus more on the process. And the competency is now more about the process, and not so much focusing on the product, the end result. Another one is to work with other people who are also curious about AI. I'm fortunate enough that at ARC, there are quite a few professors who are also curious about AI, and they are also incorporating, AI in their courses. And those professors, we go from fashion, okay, to English, to Spanish, to math, okay, and I myself is in computer science. So we have a really wide variety of faculty members from different disciplines, and we are all using AI in slightly different ways, and we're exploring AI also in different ways. And when we come together and we share what we have found and what our discoveries, it's always enlightening to each other of, oh, I did not know that it was able to do that, or this is a great way to use AI. So I think that is also a very important step, or important part of understanding the appropriate role of AI, because there's no such thing as the appropriate role of AI. I believe it is there are multiple roles, and it is changing all the time. And and also those roles can also be different depending on what you teach, and also what you think is the long-term goal for your students. And then the last one is, I keep reminding myself as well as my students, is if AI can do it, then people are not needed to do exactly the same thing. And it obviously applies to students, but I think it also applies to faculty. Now, to respond to what Anna said, or to echo what Anna said, I think the human aspect is super important. Um, And one of the things that I think AI really cannot do, so all the AI platforms, that is trying to encroach in education and replacing professors altogether, is our ability to recognize a student who needs help and be able to help the student to overcome those difficulties. The recognition part is difficult. I know the AI or any type of online learning management system can look at the score and the performance of a student and go like, oh, okay, I think you need some help, or they can flag the student. But it is not easy for an AI to approach a student to find out, okay, so tell me what is going on. Or in my case, I was able to observe how my student looked up information and how the student was interpreting the text that I have prepared, the OER content. And in that process, I was able to figure out, oh, okay, so slow down here, okay? You just read past this entire sentence, but did you understand what this sentence means and how it is making a connection from this concept to something that we have learned like 2 weeks ago? So I was able to observe that and then interact with student to say, okay, so maybe we need to change the strategy of how you're reading the material. You might need to take notes in the process and so on. And I believe that part is difficult for any AI to do. So I think that's all I have to say, for this topic at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if Richard is out there, we probably only have time for one question from the audience, but if you wanted to pick your favorite, and then your answers, of course, will be off the cuff since we don't know what the person is going to ask. And yeah, just give your thoughts on whatever question. And then after that, we will be taking a break for 15 minutes. So I assume, Richard, that you got some questions.
So there are several questions. I think to Anna and Talk's great credit, most of the questions that have been coming in the chat have been addressed, maybe not directly, but the substance of them was there. So I'm going to take one question and tweak it a little bit and say, much of our conversation focused on students as the audience and the way as faculty we try and be teachers to them. The last question did a little bit of a pivot to our colleagues as the audience. Anna and Talk, you both are at community colleges with locally elected boards of trustees. Anna, you're a single college district. Talk, you're in a district with 4 colleges. If you were invited to go to your local board of trustees meeting, and at the beginning of the meeting when you are limited to 3 minutes, how would you speak to the board about the kinds of resources that need to be available to faculty and what your board as representatives of the community need to do what they can to ensure the continuation of quality education? And I want to give a shout out to Tatiana from San Bernardino Valley CCD, who asked a question which I have taken great liberties with. But her specific question was about a district that is hiring outside consultants to come and deal with this issue. So that's one possibility. But how would the two of you urge your trustees to equip faculty to do this work?
Let's see, Talk, would you like to go first? And then Anna.
Sure, I'll give it a try. In 3 minutes, I would say allocate some resources like release time to arrange roundtable discussions where faculty can talk to faculty. So we basically have early adopters, like Anna, and some people who are curious but have not kind of dabbled in it yet, and other people who are fearful of the technology sitting in the same room and share their fear, share the experience, and share their success of using AI. And it's going to be a kind of organic kind of thing, organic kind of meeting and interaction amongst those faculty members. And we just need to have time allocated for that communication to happen. I think that has to be the first step. Now, if in that process the people who are hesitating to use AI or the people who were fearful to use AI become kind of more receptive, then maybe we can talk to the district again, talk to the board of trustees again, and now we can actually allocate time for actual training of how to use AI, the actual techniques, what prompts to use, what resources are available, and so on. So I think that's what I can come up with in a few minutes.
Thank you so much. Anna.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the call for resources. And I think specifically, I really love the model of communities of practice that Michelle Pacansky-Brock has kind of put forward and led some of those. So I think supporting spaces where faculty are coming up with solutions and answers and not directing what that is, but having some both compensation and accountability that the institution is developing policies about AI at every level, from the course level to the department level to a program level, and that we're reviewing our course descriptions and our SLOs in light of AI. And we're sort of justifying any changes we might make and thinking about where we do AI literacy. So structurally supporting a big process, it's a big ask, and we've got to support faculty to do it, and we've got to support faculty leadership in it. But I would just underscore the urgency that, this is a completely unprecedented rate of change for society, and that we can confront it in a positive way, but that we really can't look away from it, because the value of our degree is at stake, our students' futures are at stake, and they need this support and leadership from us. So I think colleges can make that happen and can support faculty to lead on it.
Thank you so much. I have learned so much just from listening to your answers to these questions, and it actually makes me excited to get at the problem solving that we're going to have to do at our institutions, from the Senate to the union to the board. So that is just so inspiring. At this time, we're going to take a 15-minute break, and the two of you are welcome if you want to come back after the break and join one of the breakout rooms, but you're also welcome to get on about your Saturday. We really appreciate your expertise, your different points of view, and all of your knowledge, because I think a lot of us, I can speak for myself, have been reluctant to even open up the chat GPT and see what it has to say. So it's nice to talk to people who have done it. Yeah, it's been absolutely wonderful. So wholehearted thanks once again from the FACCC Policy Committee to our two speakers. So thank you, thank you. Does anyone have any last and final comments? All right, I have one, and it is just to let you know that FACCC has a new bill that they are working on. It's SB 241, authored by Senator Sabrina Cervantes, which will require that non-instructional faculty like counselors and librarians must be humans. This is a follow-up on last year's AB 2370, which did get signed into law, which was about instructional faculty. So while AI is a useful tool, SB 241 will ensure that people are at the center of education. And my only other announcement is that the Advocacy and Policy Conference that FACCC puts on every year is coming up February 23rd and 24th. And so if you'd like to attend that, please register online at facc.org. Linda.
In April, so this is further away, but if you're a part-time faculty member or an ally of part-time faculty, which I hope you all are if you're not part-time, our part-time faculty symposium is coming up in April, so a few months away, but it's going to be online, 3 hours, it's free, it's always a great event.
I'm FACCC's Government Relations Director. We want to hear all your thoughts on AI. Please share to my email things that you gleaned from your breakout sessions, and we will try our best to incorporate those into policy as we move forward into the next legislative cycle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody have anything else? thank you all for being here. It's been a great morning, and on behalf of the FACC Policy Committee, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your Saturday and hope to see you at the conference at the end of the month.